international affairs editor Philip Turle is joining me here on set. I suppose the big question ahead of his arrival, Philip, is Trump going to remain defiant? Will Europe be able to change his mind at all?
Well, I think we've got the first indication looking at that press conference last night at the White House, which went rambling on for 1 hour 20 monologue with Donald Trump, and then he answered a few questions coming up and always talking about the same things. Immigrants being murderers, being let out of prison, coming to the United States, mental asylums. There's no factual evidence for this at all. Biden being the worst president ever, we had that again. The fact that the elections were stolen in 2021, the economy is doing great, all of the same things that Donald Trump always says in his press conferences. I wonder whether or not he's actually going to say that again this afternoon when he gets to Davos. What he did say also, when questioned by one of the journalists about Greenland, was, well, you'll see what I'm capable of concerning Greenland. So that leads one to believe that Donald Trump's not at all ready to back down on this. Basically, this is not the first time that Greenland's been on the agenda for the US president. Back in 2019 also he was talking about taking control of Greenland, but at that time he had people to say, look, Mr. President, this is not a particularly good idea. This time around all those people have gone, so he has an open boulevard. And Donald Trump right now is, I think, probably at his most dangerous because he has no checks and balances in the United States. He has both Congress, House of Representatives in his power, under his control, and he has to try to win the upcoming midterm elections in November. So this is like an open boulevard right now to do what he wants. So he's coming to Davos, pretty determined over the Greenland, taking control of Greenland. We don't know how this is going to work out, and I think the atmosphere in Davos is going to be pretty tense ahead of the arrival of Donald Trump today, because no one really knows how this is going to work out, what Donald Trump is going to say, and what his reaction is going to be towards other leaders who are beginning to put up a more common front against Donald Trump. France, in the last few hours, has asked NATO for a NATO exercise in Greenland. It says it's ready to contribute to it. And I think this is a sign that there is sort of like, a growing front against Donald Trump. We'll see how Donald Trump reacts to that when he gets to Davos in a few hours from now.
Yeah, let's analyse that a little bit more if we can, Philip. I mean, how united do you think are Europeans in their opposition to the US annexing Greenland?
Well, one of the things that the United States, and in particular Donald Trump, has been trying to do is to disrupt the European Union. That's why he was so in favour of Brexit, for the United Kingdom to separate the UK from the rest of Europe, as in a way of undermining the EU. He's made no bones about the fact he doesn't like the European Union, doesn't really understand what its function is and why it's, in his view, against the United States. There has been a very softly approach by the EU towards Donald Trump up until now, saying, well, let's negotiate with him. If there are tariffs, we'll get round the tariffs. We can talk and we'll get back to normal. That visibly has not worked. There's been some progress on tariffs at one time, but then those tariffs were reimposed again afterwards. So I think the feeling now is, if we're going to do business with Donald Trump, we've got to approach him on the same level as he's approaching us. That's to say, there's got to be a confrontation somewhere down the line. So we've seen comments coming out from European Union leaders. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU's response will be unflinching, united and proportional. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, we have no interest in picking a fight, but we will hold our ground. And Emmanuel Macron himself saying it's a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. We don't agree on that. So 2 points that are, I think, important to underline. First, the EU has decided to hold off on ratifying the key trade deal that was agreed last year in July. I remember that signing ceremony with Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump. And also is threatening, this is something Emmanuel Macron has said, to introduce an anti-coercion instrument, the bazooka, if you like, which could limit access to EU markets. It has never actually happened yet, and it's something that was unthinkable just a few weeks ago. It was designed to fend off China or, for example, Russia, but not a NATO ally like the United States. But that could also be brought into being if deemed necessary. So those are the weapons, I think, that the EU is going to try to use against Donald Trump.
Just time to ask you about the Board of Peace for Gaza. Of course, Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron trading words over it. We're just hearing, in fact, Sweden saying they won't participate. Is anyone on board? I mean, we've got Vladimir Putin being invited.
Well, there are two non so far. One from Emmanuel Macron. That's the one that's annoyed Donald Trump, saying, well, it doesn't matter because he's not going to be around much longer, undermining, trying to ridicule Emmanuel Macron and saying that he will impose high tariffs on French champagne and French wine if France doesn't join. There are some countries that are on board, Hungary, United Arab Emirates, Morocco and Israel in the last few hours. As I said, it is ready to join in. Steve Witkoff is on board, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, Tony Blair, the former UK Prime Minister. But the big question here is just what will this serve and will it be any different from the United Nations? I think that is the question that everyone